Welcome to the Chronic Warriors podcast with Cassandra A. Campbell.
A platform to share,
Hear,
and cheer chronic illness warriors.
Just know that when you made your commitment to your partner, you took their whole selves.
To be able to have a bad day, to be able to say, do you know what, I can't cope no more.
I am a chronic warrior because every day I wake up and I'm so glad to still be here.
Welcome to another episode of the Chronic Warriors podcast. Today I'm speaking with Tim and Helen. Helen lives with chronic illness and they've both recently become parents. So I thought it'd be nice for us to discuss how they're finding parenthood, managing Helen's symptoms and their relationship. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hiya.
How are you doing today and how's the little one?
Yeah, she's fine. We've been to baby sensory this morning, so we're a bit. I'm a bit tired, but yeah, she's just gone to sleep.
Okay, so you're getting a little bit of a break. Brilliant. So, would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourselves? Helen, if you could share what condition you have and anything else that you both like to share, please.
So I'm 39. I'm still working. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome classic. I have fibromyalgia, asthma, a vast range of allergies, oral allergy syndrome, bee pollen syndrome, and skin issues. I think probably covers it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's most of it.
Yeah.
My name's Tim. I am 34. I am, at this point now, Helen's full-time carer, pretty much. It's probably worth noting at this point that I have, it's undiagnosed, but pretty damn sure that I've got ADD or ADHD, which does come up and inform a lot of our relationship. So that's useful to know.
Thank you for sharing that with us. So, Helen, when did you start to get symptoms?
Okay, so I've always had joint pain. I know it sounds really silly. I didn't know other people didn't. I think as a child, I wasn't very good at sports. I couldn't really do anything with my arms. So even like I'd go to guides and I couldn't do the brownies and couldn't do the salute. But I didn't think anything of it. I used to get injured a lot. But yeah, it got worse and worse. And I had to start giving up hobbies and giving things up, really. I think it really got a lot worse sort of A-levels, university, where you've got that added stress and sort of my allergies kicked in my teens as well.
Yeah.
And then starting to work. So I'm a scientist, but I work in the water industry, doing things outdoors, which gets more and more complicated. So I think it really kicked home that I needed to stop individually treating injuries. So I think with EDS, you spend a lot of time being told, oh, well, it's just this joint or just that joint, or we'll look at this. And so they start saying, no, it's all of me. There's something wrong with all of me, or there's something up that isn't the same as everyone else. Yeah. I think people sort of talk about running marathons and hitting the wall, and you think, well, that's how I feel, but it's just getting downstairs. It took me a long time to realise that I was in pain and it wasn't something that everybody just coped with. There was something to start investigating. And I had to really persuade doctors to move on from looking at musculoskeletal things. You know, I hadn't really heard about EDS, I hadn't really heard about fibro, but there's something wrong with all of my joints. And I was effectively running a building site, 2 labs, and a sort of a group of staff. And I was absolutely exhausted and in agony. My hands really hurt. I couldn't do a lot of the jobs I needed to do. And I finally, I think, waited from January till March for my referral to actually come through with a date in the post to see a rheumatologist. I walked into a consultant rheumatologist office at Basingstoke Hospital, and he picked up the leaflets to diagnose me before I'd even sat down and said, I think you have, at the time, because this was 2013, so they didn't say EDS then, we think you have complex hypermobility syndrome. And then I also think you have fibromyalgia. So yeah, it was really a bit of a shock, I have to say. But it was really quick to suddenly go, actually, yeah, this is a huge problem. It's going to affect everything. Yeah. Or rather, it's already affecting everything. I just have to stop trying to either cope or deny it.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And going back to what you said, it's not silly at all. And I think there are so many people who grew up thinking, well, everybody has these problems,
Yeah.
Or the opposite and thinking, well, why am I the only one who has these problems? But I've heard a lot of the similar story from a lot of people, and including myself, going years and years and years, them not really looking at all of me.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, going to a rheumatologist and being told it's joint hypermobility syndrome and we think fibromyalgia. So it's such a common story, it seems, within the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome community. So yeah, you're definitely not on your own with that one. I'm hearing that it really impacted your work, which again is another common thing, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, I kind of gave up my hobbies one by one. So when I was a teenager, I danced, I played rugby, I rode horses. Riding was hurting, so I stopped. I had to stop. I got injured every single match with rugby, so that stopped pretty quickly. And then I got to university, took up fencing and then historical sword. And I thought, I'm literally dropping the sword out of my hand. This is not right. I can't keep doing this. So yeah, I kind of slowly gave everything up. And then you start working, and then it's like, right, well, I'll put everything into this. I had a previous long-term marriage and was trying to care for my husband as well as myself. And yeah, you just get so busy getting on with it that you hit a wall. I think everybody does, that the first time they go, no, wait, everything needs to change because of my diagnosis or because of how I'm not coping.
Having to give up things, how did that impact you?
It's horrible, to be honest. I was so busy and I did so much. And I remember just falling at a dance or a Cawley and thinking, well, that's just an ankle injury. Or having a day where I try and do something and I have to just give up and go home halfway through. And you just start thinking, well, that's just a one-off and it'll not be like that next week, or that won't happen again. And I think there's a slow realization that you're not capable of doing things. And for me, it was slowing up and putting on weight at the same time. So you pretty rapidly let go of any body image or idea of what your future plan is, I think, and just start coping with what's happening to you now.
Yeah, just trying to get through every day.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you met Tim.
Yes.
Yep.
And how was that for you both? How was that for you, Tim?
So we've been together for about 5 years now, I think. So yeah, the way we got together was pretty interesting. So we met together at a game, live action role play game, LARPing, which is a big passion of both of ours. Helen's been doing it for a lot longer than I have. One of the many hobbies she has.
Well, it's the one that I could keep doing, because effectively all you do is go somewhere for an afternoon or an evening and sit down and talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So it's not very physical. It can be demanding because you still got the energy to do it. But after my diagnosis, had a couple of years of doing nothing, and then went, no, I'm managing my pain as best I can. I'm managing my medication. I've got my exercise. I need a social life. We relocated and I didn't know anybody. So Michael and I said, right, well, we'll go and just join this local group, which is where I met Tim.
So we were both in very long-term relationships at the time, both of which we found were coming to an end.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we started talking to each other, to be honest, because I was looking after Michael, who was going through multiple sclerosis diagnosis at the time.
And I was looking after my partner, Emily, who, due to severe diabetes, ended up with full kidney failure and had a kidney pancreas transplant and a variety of ongoing, fairly severe medical issues.
So when we met, she'd literally just had a double transplant operation. You were looking after her, as well as working.
So you were both with partners who had a chronic illness as well?
Yes, so we were both caring anyway. So those relationships were, as I say, coming to an end for their own reasons.
We were both still there because we felt obliged to keep looking after them. That's one of the things we talked about, actually, that we feel like we're caring for this other person and we have an obligation, but we're not actually getting enough time to look after ourselves.
Yeah, which I'd say is fairly accurate. That's how we both felt. And we ended up basically leaving those relationships and joining together with each other.
Tim was fairly persuasive.
Yeah. So we had a pretty quick start to the relationship, because with us both leaving our partners and getting together, we ended up in the space of 3 months. Well, from meeting each other, it was 3 months and we bought a house together.
Oh, wow.
Which is exactly the opposite of what I would tell anyone to do.
Conversations about this is a really bad plan, but we haven't got anywhere else to go and it doesn't make sense to rent somewhere else separately, and then just get off with it.
If Helen bought a house without me, we'd never end up buying a house together, and I wanted to buy a house at the time.
And I couldn't look after a place on my own and I really needed some help.
So basically through a series of terrible decisions and really rarely good luck, we bought a house, jumped into living together with one another full time, and it sort of just worked.
It's not been easy, but it worked.
Yeah.
But that's wonderful when things happen in that way and it works. That's just beautiful.
Well, it really was me going, Tim, are you really, really sure about this? Because I need somebody to look after me. I can't do this on my own. If we're doing this, it's full on or nothing, basically. Are you really sure? And I kept saying yes.
And I said, well, I was happy because, like I said, coming from my previous relationship, I was pretty used to being a carer for a person for quite a considerable period of time. And as well as that, in my previous relationship, there was a lot of mental health and emotional issues there, which wasn't something that came with Helen to a degree. So even knowing that Helen, because listening to the other interviews you've given, there's a lot of people that were like, oh, well, obviously there's a big concern. Obviously, Helen was concerned with me taking on responsibility, I would say, and taking on like the load of caring for a person with chronic fatigue. And to me, it was still actually a step down in terms of responsibility. For me, although it is a relatively rare and unusual situation, it has been an easier time to care for Helen and give her what she needs than it was in my previous relationship. So,
and I just had to keep saying, "You're seeing me on a good day." You know, I rested yesterday, said I can be here today. Oh, it was such a downer, wasn't it? It was just like.
I was like, nah, it'd be fine.
I just,
right.
yeah, you kept saying you would be okay and it would be okay, and I just kept having to explain. You know, you have to feel like you have to explain your condition all the time, and it's such a relief when you can just stop.
Yeah,
you've definitely got it. You understand. I can just relax and actually start looking after myself.
I totally hear where you're coming from, Helen, because it is that thing of someone can say that they're okay with it, but until you're actually doing it, you don't actually know. You know, and I had a similar thing with my partner, and I think for the first even up until a year ago, I was still sort of like, are you sure you can deal with this? You know, I was still asking the question. I think the past probably year and a half, I've been having a lot of injuries, which are things that he wasn't used to in the first year.
Yeah.
So it then got me asking the question again, sort of like, babes, are you sure? Because it wasn't like this in the beginning. So you kind of need that reassurance at first, I think, because you don't know what somebody's going to be able to cope with when it actually happens. Talking about it and actually dealing with it is two different things.
I also have the massive luck of Helen being excellent at controlling her own condition. So I think as soon as Helen got the full diagnosis of EDS and fibromyalgia, she did a lot of research in her own time. She's very well informed, and she's very good at educating herself, which meant that as soon as I was coming into the relationship and needed anything explained to me, Helen was able to do it very well and very clearly, and was able to point me at the bits I needed to know. As well as that, when Helen suffers injuries and things like that, she's very good at being very matter of fact, very controlled with it, and basically go, if something terrible happens, like something gets dislocated, she can tell me how to put it back or something like that. So I've relocated your hips, haven't I?
Yeah.
When your hips went down, that was during the pregnancy, which we'll get onto later.
Mm-hmm.
But having that level of understanding of her own condition, it was very, very useful for me, because it grants me the ability to then interact with it, essentially.
Yeah, it's really hard seeing you wanting to help or being upset. I think you kind of are less upset now, but me going, there isn't anything you can do. There's nothing. You can get me that drink, or you can understand that I can't hang the washing up, or. But when there is something I can do, you also inform me and tell me how to do it. So I have to, though. Yeah.
The communication is really important, as it is.
Honestly, the biggest thing I would say, this probably come up multiple times over this entire process here. The biggest thing I can say in any of this is communication.
Yeah.
That is the most useful thing. Communication flows both ways. So me telling Helen how comfortable I am with what's going on, Helen telling me what's wrong, if I can help, what to help, emotionally, how people are feeling, just being open, honest, and communicating as best as possible.
Yeah, I think when you're in a lot of pain, you shut down, because you do get to the point where you're just dealing with the one thing you can cope with. So, what do you have to do in a day? You have to eat and get to the bathroom. And if that's all that's happening that day, and that's where you've got that far, you've got to say, today's not happening. And it's not just one day, it's going to be a week, or it's going to be a blip. Say that, can you help me with this? Or I just can't. Even earlier today, I can't do that. If I'm going to do that, it's going to really hurt. So I have to stop myself. And I took a long time to learn that.
And also to go back to the start, at the beginning of our relationship, there was a lot of me convincing Helen to tell me when she needed stuff doing and not try and do it herself, because there was a lot of things where Helen would still try and do stuff, and it was a lot easier for me as well. I was always very worried about taking Helen's autonomy away from her. I very much don't want to take stuff off you or make you feel like you can't do stuff. But at the same time, sometimes you do stuff when you should be asking me to do it because I can help. So that's a really difficult balancing act, to be honest.
If you don't use it, you lose it. You can get to the point where the only thing you can do for your body is to keep trying.
Yeah.
And there's a bit inside you that goes, You know, if I just say I can't walk anymore and I have to use a wheelchair, then I'm never going to get out of it again. If my brain says I'll use a wheelchair to help me on a day out, then it's a better way of looking at it. It took me a long time, I think, to change my mindset. And I read a lot about like pain management to kind of try and start thinking about that, because it's really easy to just, as I say, just shut down and cope, and then everything becomes really, really negative.
So just to rally back to the original point, how we got together was, it was a bit weird, and we sort of jumped in both feet first, and it was a case of just both being open and dealing with things as they came up as best we could.
It was one of those situations where you're talking a lot and you're really good friends, and I'm absolutely convinced you was not interested in me in any way. And then Tim went, "Oh, actually, I really like you and I'd like to get together." And you go, "Wow, I didn't realise that." You always see it in films and think those people are idiots.
Yeah, we were those idiots. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds like a lovely romantic story.
Yeah.
It was a bit mad.
It was a bit mad. But an element of that was disability, though, because I literally said I can't get through this on my own. If I'm trying to sell a house and buy a house and move in and do everything, I can't keep it clean, I can't look after it, I'm going to have to give up work, I don't know what I'm doing. Literally, I can't do this. I can leave my husband, but I can't do the next bit. I'm not well enough. So I think moving in together and getting a house was the way we did it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to have been the right choice. So, you know, congratulations on that.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily advise other people to do the same thing.
No.
Well, we've all got our own paths and our own journey.
Yeah.
So what works for one may not work for another. We've all just got to go with our instincts, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and your instincts worked out. So that's absolutely great. So you've recently had a little girl, Lily.
Yes.
She's 5 months old, yeah?
Yep,
Yes.
5 months as of yesterday, yep.
Yeah.
So before you tell us about being Lily's parents, Helen, what was the pregnancy like?
So I'd always left off having a baby as the thing that I couldn't do, or I shouldn't do. You know, if I can't look after myself and have extra energy and ability, then children is just not going to happen. And that was the conclusion that I come to earlier on. But with Tim, everything was going that well, and I was getting time to do my exercises and feel well and be healthy and manage myself. And it was like, actually, maybe we can do this. So we just got on with it.
So it also helps I'm very pro baby. I very much want to
well, it took 2 miscarriages and 3 years to get to pregnancy, and that was hard and eventful. So I'd done the beginning bit quite a few times, and in reality, lockdown did us a favour, because my job instantly went to be completely working from home.
And on the flip side, my job went away because
Tim got made redundant.
Yeah. So sadly, I got made redundant just before I could get furlough for it, which was not the best of things. But with me being made redundant and not having to go into work at the beginning of the first lockdown, I was obviously at home. I was looking at the viability of going back to work. Now, all of the work that I'd done and all of my work and experience was in retail customer sales and hospitality stuff. So I've worked in coffee shops. My last job, which I just left, was area manager for a retail store. And I worked in various different forms of retail or hospitality up until then. So we were looking at how viable it was for me to go back to work. And the concern was, with Helen being essentially high up in the vulnerable group.
I'd been classed in the shielding category due to my asthma.
Yeah. There was no way I could do any kind of customer facing work without putting Helen at severe risk, we both felt. I looked because there were a lot of online jobs picking up during that period, and just unfortunately wasn't successful. And then
I got pregnant. So we took the decision that, you know, we'd manage on less, we'd have 1 car instead of 2.
Mm-hmm.
And if Tim stayed home and is now going to be a stay-at-home dad and properly my carer, we'd be all right. We can cope, you know.
For me here, this was, I want to say something a little bit about gender politics, because I had always honestly wanted to be a stay-at-home dad and felt like it wasn't something that was an option for me as a bloke.
Right.
As right or as wrong as that assumption is, I'm not really going to go into that. But then we found that that was an option, that Helen was happy to continue working. Helen's always
I argued really hard for a pay rise, basically.
Yeah.
And then a couple of months later went, by the way, I'm now pregnant. I'll take that maternity leave. Thank you very much.
Helen was earning more than I was anyway, and we are able to subsist on the money that Helen provides, meaning that I'm able to take up my preferred career of being a dad, which I'm perfectly happy with, and full-time care for Helen, which
And
to be honest, all rolled together is
Yeah.
exactly what I want to
I
do.
wouldn't be able to keep working through my pregnancy, I don't think. If I'd had to be in the office, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
But because I was at home and because Tim was free, so he would make sure I'd had 3 meals, make sure that I was okay. I would literally sit at my desk for the day because it was hard work, wasn't it? It was more work than normal, and would bring me meals and tell me it was time to give up and go to bed. So you were great. And to be honest, until week 34, I was absolutely fine. I did extra exercises. When I got as far as week 34, both my hips dislocated. One went and then the other. And absolute agony, I have to say.
Yep.
It was horrible.
And then blood pressure issues.
Yeah, well, about the same time, my blood pressure shot up. So I got to my week 34 midwife appointment and thought I should probably mention, I think my blood pressure's gone up. I feel a bit funny. My heart's racing. I've got an O2 meter at home, which I use just to check what my asthma's doing before I bother the GP. And I noticed my heart rate's really high on that. Is this a problem? And I think I went from the midwife to the GP an hour later to being in hospital a couple of hours after that. They just sort of sent me straight in, and I had preeclampsia and then I had HELLP syndrome.
The plan was for Helen was around, what was it, week 38 of planned cesarean?
Yeah, so I was going to have a planned scheduled cesarean just before being term.
But what actually happened was we ended up, as Helen says, going in to quickly check on blood pressure and slightly wonky O2 sats, being into hospital, and then 8 days of being discharged, going back in for more checks, blood pressure being too high, going back in, being discharged, going back in, and it getting steadily worse. Initially, it was preeclampsia, but it wasn't too severe and they could manage it, and we were sent home. Then we went back in and it was preeclampsia, but now it's severe enough, we're going to keep you in for monitoring. And then we got to the one night where it was suddenly, your preeclampsia is severe enough that we're going to move up the cesarean by a week to tomorrow morning. We're just going to do one more set of blood tests tonight. Those blood tests came back and it was emergency. We're going to take you directly to cesarean now.
Yeah, again, we've kind of talked it through from both of our reflections for how it felt and what actually happened, because it is different from how it feels to what everybody's seeing. So one of my problems was actually my fibromyalgia. So every time they'd say, can you just stay in? It's like, this hospital is hot, it's bright, it's noisy. You know, my nervous system is fried. I can't sleep. I'm sleeping, I'm crashing for half an hour and an hour. I can't deal with being in hospital. I would like to go home and manage myself, but I'm in so much pain and additional pain than normal. I think the problem was I had high blood pressure and I was reporting chest pain. So if you're a medical professional, you look for infections, you look for COVID, you look for pneumonia, you look for blood clots. So they were mostly checking me for blood clots. And I think I actually had HELLP syndrome quite a while, but that wasn't considered until they completely ruled out every scan they possibly could for blood clots. It's hard because you see so many people and every single one that says, oh, I've just done this. It's funny. So I'm taking your blood, but it's really slow or something like that. And you go, can you remember that I've got EDS? And every time they'll say, oh, this has happened, but it's a bit weird. I'm like, yeah, because that's EDS. Can I just flag again? I've got EDS. So I took the Stickman communication cards with me. And I did get to the point where I was literally in so much pain I couldn't speak, and I had to just lift up the I'm too hot, please realise that I feel it's hotter than it is. You know, I can't speak right now. I'm in too much pain to communicate. But at the same time, you feel like you need to make a fuss to be taken seriously because maternity is there to treat maternity. Don't have the time or ability to treat you with a chronic condition as well.
Yeah.
I've actually done a big lot of feedback for them and kind of said one of the things I wish I'd taken a wheelchair in, just so that when you walked in the room, you realised I was disabled because I have invisible conditions, rather than being annoyed it was taking me so long to move out of bed. But that's because I'd gone from subluxing hips to dislocated hips, and I'm on a whacking dose of codeine just to get in and out of this hospital bed. Yeah.
That is a lot to deal with. That must have been so challenging, frustrating. I mean, it's difficult enough for people like us who are either not believed or, you know, have to go years without getting a diagnosis and things. And
you've got all of that in your head, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You've got all of that in your head, knowing, you know, I'm a chronic fighter. I don't need to explain myself to you, but I just need this bit of understanding from you for the next thing I have to do. I had to start writing everything down.
Yeah.
Because I already had a lot of medication, and then they had a lot more medication. Like, I've just taken this is the next thing I'm going to take. The next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to be taken for that test, or a consultant's going to tell me this. And it changed every day and it changed every shift. So while they were scanning for things, I'm then busy worrying about Lily, although she was fine all the way through.
Well, that's then we got to, like I say, in the evening, we were expecting an emergency C-section the following morning, and then it turned out to be Helen needed an emergency C-section that night, right then and there.
They took a blood test and basically said, we're going to do your cesarean tomorrow. And they took another blood test and said, we think you have HELLP syndrome, which I'd never heard of. Your liver and kidney are failing and your blood cells are breaking down. And the way this guy put it, and I'd already made a complaint about him, like not considering my EDS formally, I said, I don't think this consultant's actually taken into account a lot of the things that are going to happen to me. He said the only way to resolve this issue, and we have to do it quickly, is remove the offending article. How far away is your partner? I said, well, he's just gone home. Phone. I said, can somebody phone him? And no, you do that yourself. So yeah, fibromyalgia, bright lights, noise. I've got about 10 people all trying to get in a cubicle simultaneously, because you've got the blood transfusion team and the anaesthetist team and the doctors and the midwives. I was like, Tim, can you come back again? I think it's going to be now.
Oh my gosh. And I thought my pregnancy and labour were bad.
I feel awful going to mothers groups, because you kind of go, and can you talk about yourself? And I just go, it was quite tricky.
Putting it mildly.
Yeah, had 8 days in hospital beforehand and 10 days in hospital afterwards.
Yeah. So from my point of view, they'd taken the blood test late evening. So I was like, well, they're going to chuck me out before we even get the blood test back. So I'm going to go home now. We're expecting it first thing in the morning. I'm going to get myself some rest.
Yeah.
And then I'll be ready and back, and we'll all be fine for the morning.
Yeah.
And then and so I've sat down for about an hour. I get a phone call from Helen going, no, come back now. I was like, oh God.
If he doesn't get hit fast enough, we're going ahead anyway, because HELLP syndrome has quite a high fatality rate, which I obviously didn't know at the time. As soon as you got preeclampsia, you read every preeclampsia complication going, particularly if you're disabled. You're used to researching everything.
Yeah.
So I knew, I'd heard the word, and I thought I was desperately trying to remember what this thing was, because they weren't telling me very much. And I thought, what do I tell Tim? And I'm not telling him anything. Like, I've just been told my kidney and liver are failing, and he's been through all of that with his previous partner. So I'm not going to say a word. I'm just like, Tim, I'll come back now. It's got worse. And
Which is probably the best.
I didn't say anything. Yeah.
So when I found that out immediately, I wasn't best pleased, but on reflection, it was probably the best thing to do.
Well, it's like trying to manage your condition every day. You shut down into what you have to do. You know, you're like, brilliant. I was going to do a social party and I can't. Right, that's gone. Okay, I can get up and get dressed and feel like a human being. Oh, I can't do that. Right, I need to strip my day back into, like, what's the thing that can't wait? Yeah. So I think I certainly sort of went back to what have I got to do to get through the next hour, the next day.
So I turned up, and within about 10 minutes of me arriving, you got whisked off into surgery, and I waited for you. Because Helen had to go into general, I wasn't able to be present to the cesarean.
And I'd just eaten tea, so they had to do all sorts of drugs to remove it. Yep. I did say, are you sure about me taking this medication? If there's a chance I might go in. And no, go ahead and have your evening meal.
And that was at 11:30. Lily was born.
Yeah.
Which then we had a worrisome next day, because Lily was then quite early for us.
She was 5 weeks early, but they took her straight to neonatal, so we didn't see her. I didn't see her at all.
As it turned out, Lily was actually pretty much absolutely fine. Very little concern. She had some UV treatment for jaundice, but nothing more than was standard. Essentially, we were told, like, all babies have like a mild jaundice, or it's not particularly concerning. It wasn't until about 6 o'clock the following day we got to see her, and we were very worried, as you probably expect, pretty worried until then, because we didn't know what state she was in. It wasn't until about then that we found out.
I heard, I'm sort of on high amounts of morphine and can't move, and they're saying, oh, we'll get you some news in a minute, or it's fine, but we'll get you something. And then you had the news she has to come up to be with you. And I was like, I can't move. How am I supposed to look after a baby? Well, 6 o'clock the next day, I was going to say, I was so determined that I was going. They said you can go and see her down in neonatal, and I was so determined I had to literally just sit upright and get into that wheelchair. And I was doing it. It was so slow, and I was in so much pain. I thought I absolutely have to see her. And then I know there was a big row between neonatal and the midwives. The midwives were saying, literally, Helen's not ready to look after a baby. She can't do this yet. And they were sort of saying, no, she has to come up and be with you. So we were, again, vaguely lucky due to COVID. Only the birth partner was allowed onto the ward, but because Tim would have to go and leave, we already had to have COVID tests every day. So the midwives, because all the way through I've been talking to them about the EDS, and to be honest, they're pretty clued up. They know their EDS ladies. Said, right, Tim moves in with you in hospital. So
yes, basically I got to move in for the next 10 days whilst we stayed in hospital.
You a bed to be in the room with me.
Yeah. Which honestly was a godsend at that point, because we couldn't have done it without that.
Well, there's several days where I needed your help.
Yeah.
To feed me, I needed your help to get to the toilet. I needed your help to get dressed. Yeah.
So that was pretty big.
Genuinely don't know how I would have I was like, well, it's very simple. I wouldn't have been able to look after Lily and myself. I couldn't get out of the bed. It took me 20 minutes. Very, very slowly inching so my hip didn't pop again,
That's just a lot. That really
Yeah.
is a lot. And you definitely had a very eventful labour.
Yeah.
But I'm really, really glad that you're both okay.
Yep. And most importantly, Lily's okay as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
she's fine.
after all of that, and all of our concerns and her being very early, she's turned out absolutely fine.
Well, I think the issue was that if you have babies come early, and I'm thinking, why is this a big problem? Babies come early all the time, but she wasn't ready to come early. So they were very concerned that because she sort of wasn't ready to breathe and then wasn't ready to swallow. But the hospital is like a regime. You have the neonatal nurses turn up to feed your baby and make sure you're doing it, and then they have to make sure you can do it before you get discharged. And I was very aware of being judged, if you know what I mean. I'm already an older mother. I'm already not a thin mother. And now I'm not doing things well, and I'm on high dose of codeine, and I've now discovered that really high doses of codeine, I cannot function. I was shaking, I couldn't use my hands. So how are you meant to pick a baby up, change a nappy and feed it with 2 nurses watching you or 3 nurses watching you? It's really intimidating, and I have fed that back to them. There's a lot of not feeling capable, not looking capable.
Yeah.
So you have to go, right, well, I've got to do this because I don't want my child taken away.
Yeah.
Even though that's not going to happen, you've still got it in your head.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. Being a new mum, it's a lot of pressure anyway, let alone having to deal with all of that.
Yeah.
You said that you fed back to them how their behaviour and how it made you feel. Have they responded to that?
Yeah, so I mean, I had 21 pages of notes from when I was on the ward, because I literally spent all day, every time there's a 5 minutes, going, this has just happened and it's awful and this has just happened, this is how I felt. So getting it down into 9 pages of feedback, kind of grouped together under communication between shifts and pain management for somebody in chronic pain, disability management on the ward. I did send it to the hospital customer people and PALS at the same time as sending it to maternity. I kind of moved from being very understanding, because I really do understand how hard they're working, that I'm not their normal person, that I'm looking after me is not the normal function of the ward, to going, no, actually, some of those things were really wrong and I don't want another person to go through that, essentially. I had the mental health midwife, and it was going to be the head of midwifery come out to visit the house, because I didn't want to go back into hospital to have to talk to them. In the end, just mental health midwife came because they'd had sort of going into black alert for COVID on the day. And they are writing a EDS flash sheet as part of writing a kind of bullet points of this is how this person is to be treated and this is how you manage them on the ward for all chronic conditions, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
They're also doing a training day on managing disabled mothers, which they're going to use some of my direct quotes in there with saying, when you told me it was okay to sleep and I wasn't going to do the next feed on the baby, and then 2 hours later somebody came in and made me get out of bed and then told me I was getting out of bed too slow and basically took the controls off me, and then that dislocated my hip again, how humiliating and embarrassing that was, and how it then made me feel unfit. She was very clear she was going to use the direct words, and I said, honestly, if you want me to come in and talk on your training day, I will.
I really commend you for getting through it all. And I mean, you do what you have to do, don't you? But it doesn't make it any easier. But also for giving that feedback, because a lot of people, I think, whether it be through not feeling confident or fear or just thinking it's not a priority or not making the time or whatever it is, don't do that.
Yeah.
So again,
I went through several goes of thinking, this is really upsetting, do I really want to do it? And then I went through several goes of thinking, maybe I'm irrational, maybe this is not appropriate, maybe I couldn't ever expect them to understand joint dislocations. And then I thought, no, actually, that, as I said, I thinned it down to the really big things, but I thought there's also people I want to praise who are wonderful. Like a lady sort of said, whose sister had fibromyalgia, how would you manage this at home? Why don't you do that now? And it genuinely hadn't crossed my mind. Just go and get in the shower. At home I'd take all the reaction from my skin away by just having a hot shower or a cold shower. And she said, well, whatever you'd manage your condition with, do it now and don't worry about anything else for the next hour. Just, because I had preeclampsia, I was so swollen up, a lot of my joints dislocated. So it's just trying to get people to understand when they're asking you to do, just lie here still while we take this stitch out, that my fingers are also dislocated, my toes are also dislocated. It's not just kind of the one thing I've told you about. It's a global condition. Yeah.
And it's a lot for them to understand and take on, but it's very important.
Yeah.
Very important. So what you've done there is brilliant, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, giving them that feedback. And then the fact that they've taken on board your feedback and they are implemented things within their practice, in their training.
I'm lucky in that my professional life, I deal with a lot of risk management and a lot of very careful constructive criticism. As I said, I edited it several times and worded it so that it was this is my feedback and I would like this to happen, rather than this is a complaint and I'm going to see you. Because I think there was a lot of like, if you wish to pursue this legally, I was like, no, I don't. I want change.
Yeah.
I'm not just I'm not a shouting person anyway. I've had this experience, and I want people to know. Yeah, and that was something I really consciously did.
So after a very eventful pregnancy and labour, you have your lovely daughter Lily. How are you managing to balance parenting, symptoms, and your relationship?
So early on, certainly for the first couple of months, we kind of fell into / mutually agreed a shift pattern that worked really well for us.
Yeah.
I'm naturally a night owl anyway. I'm always up at nights. I'm quite happy to stay up until pretty much dawn breaks, which essentially is what I ended up doing. So we worked on a shift where the afternoon we'd both be up, we'd both be looking after the baby. And then Helen would go to bed around 10ish at night, and I'd look after the baby until about 6 a.m. and then bring her to bed. I'd start sleeping, and then there'd be a couple of hours the baby staying asleep, and then Helen would be up for the next feeds after that and look after her for the morning for a few hours until I was awake.
I mean, we only really got afternoons together, but we decided to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hell, to be honest with me, because I'm a night owl as well. So I would go to bed going, I've got a lovely long time on my own to sleep and do whatever I like, and forget about the fact that I'm now a new mum and I've got a massive scar, and I couldn't sleep. I didn't ever expect to sleep, because although I can stay up late, I'm always up early because I don't sleep very well and I don't sleep very long. But for the first time in my life, I've got a chance to nap. I've got a chance to prioritise sleep. Lying there going, I must sleep. I have a baby to feed in the morning, and then not sleeping. Yeah. It did work though, because that's one of the things we talked about. If you're on your own looking after the baby, you just look after the baby. If there's two of you looking after the baby, you then have to negotiate between you. You have to deal with, you both would actually like to be doing two separate activities, but you're going to do one activity together. You'd be on the computer, me be on the phone. We have to do something together because we're together. Mm-hmm. And it actually takes out all that time that you could annoy each other. And it works. I don't have to keep going, it's not me, Tim, it's the pain, or I've just said that because you've done something and not heard me at all. Tim's ADHD, I can talk at the side of his head, and if he's hyper focused on something, he hasn't got a clue. And then I'm like, well, I've already asked you 3 times. Mm-hmm. So it took out all of the opportunity for that to occur, and that certainly, I'd say, got us through the first bit, definitely. Yeah.
It's probably important to note we haven't done breastfeeding. We've been bottle fed.
Yeah, which helped with that setup as well. Now I've read a bit more about HELLP syndrome. I was really lucky not to be in intensive care myself, but I just didn't produce enough milk, and I also had the codeine in my system, so I'd already given her codeine withdrawal once, and they said, look, she's going to go through codeine withdrawal again, and all the different drugs I was taking to kind of combat the HELLP syndrome, it wasn't conducive to breastfeeding at all. Yeah.
So we went bottle feeding, which, I mean, for us and for our situation is better in pretty much every way.
Well, it means Tim can do everything, and I can leave the room and leave her, and she's okay.
I can fully mum.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing I couldn't do anyway, and we're not doing it. So, which is it's an important note to make.
It was really upsetting, to be honest. I did try, and I tried, but. So when you're already trying to manage your pain and try and move once an hour so you mobilise, and try and get to the loo to try and then learn how to pump or learn how to breastfeed at the same time. If it had just magically happened, that would have been great, but I don't think it magically happens very often. No. And I spent quite a few days being really upset that I was going to have to just give up. But I'm glad I did, because it was just another thing to manage as well as conditions.
I was very aware of. I was kind of pro Helen not pushing herself anymore. Being with her in the hospital and seeing how difficult things were for her, I was very sort of like, well, we have tried with this. It's clearly very difficult, and every time you're doing it, it's pushing you further and further and further. Yeah. I mean, to a degree, I think it might have been me that pushed in the end to say, look, don't bother, give up on it, because it's not necessary. She's going to be fine. We don't have to.
Yeah, it was kind of an added layer of stress and added layer of upset when you're trying to manage the outside world. So you've got very concerned parents that need a phone call every day. And then, just eating, drinking, going to loo, getting washed, doing all the things the nurses are asking you to do. It's a full day.
And I think even mums who don't have a chronic illness and don't live with pain and all the rest of it, some struggle as well with breastfeeding. So let alone having everything else to deal with, it's a lot. So you've got to make the decision that's right for you, right for your child. And that's what, in my opinion, that's the most important thing, because there's no point in trying to breastfeed and be struggling and stressing out, because actually what happens, that stress then sort of transfers into the milk and then the baby gets out, you know, so there's no point in doing that.
So that was the first couple of months, was that sort of schedule we worked on. So with it being bottle feeding, it would mean that I could do it as much as Helen, and we sort of worked it out in that rotation, which worked in some ways and didn't in others. As you were saying, you were still finding it difficult to sleep. Big concern for us at that point was Lily's weight, because since coming home from the hospital, there was a concern that she wasn't putting on weight fast enough.
Oh my word, we had so many appointments. The day when you have nothing is a relief. Just in normal life, the day when you have nothing is a relief. But when we have we've got the midwife every other day, we've got the health visitor every 2 or 3 days, and then we need to go back to hospital for this, and then we need to go back for that. It's good because it pushed us into having, being organised enough to leave the house, and me pushing through, I can walk from here to there, or me saying I can't, Tim, you've got to do this one on your own, which I did do quite a few times. I just went, you know what, today is a red day. Can you do the appointment without me? But yeah, we had, I would say, excessive amounts of appointments. At the same time, I'm talking to other mums on the internet who are going, how do you get to see a health visitor? I was like, how do you get them to stop coming to your house? Honestly, it's lovely, but they're here every day. So eventually she started sort of putting on weight enough that they were less concerned, but we had a lot of appointments, I have to say.
It all kind of came down to, again, the early birth, her being quite a sleepy baby to begin with, and feeding being difficult, and basically just getting enough milk into her.
She would fall asleep before she got to the end of the bottle, and then we'd have to wake her up so she'd be awake to feed, or then make sure she slept so that she had enough energy next time round. But
after about 3 months, I'd say that was no longer a problem at all. She's now put on plenty of weight and feed plentifully.
I genuinely think that my skills in managing my condition really helped us. I'm super organised, and when I can do nothing else, I can write lists. I do. I hyper manage, and so knowing what time it is ish she's going to wake up, and knowing how far away from it we are, and knowing when we have to have a bottle ready and cooling, we just planned our way through it, I think.
So I mean, this was actually another benefit of not breastfeeding, is Helen can get quite concerned about such things, and especially with list making a list. It was really beneficial to us to do feeding by bottle, because you know exactly how much milk the baby has taken. And Helen can write it down in a list and be...
I can go, I do not have to be concerned about this because I know it's okay. Yeah.
Whereas with breastfeeding, obviously you're never
quite sure how much you've done.
Which is not necessarily a problem for most people, but Helen has quite a lot of concern about not knowing.
The first question when you see the health visitor, the midwife, and the GP is how much milk has she had? And I'm like, well, I don't know. So I think if I didn't know if we've done 50 millilitres, well, I'm a scientist anyway, I want to know how many millilitres. But if I know that we're supposed to hit a target and we've hit the target, then I can start worrying about how can I stop my ankle hurting.
You can focus on something else.
Or I've sat up in bed with her, holding her, and that's absolutely killing it. I have to find a different way of doing it. I've then got some time to think about that or to read about that, because I've done a fair amount of finding a different way to do something to work around my body, like a different way to move.
What is great as well is that I love how you've managed to find so many positives out of what could be deemed as negatives, in regards to COVID, Tim, you being made redundant, and the breastfeeding and all of these things. It's just wonderful the way that you're able to turn those negatives into positives. That's really important. And also, Helen, how you are able to use the skills that you've developed because you have chronic illness and find positives out of those as well, which I think, they call them transferable skills. I think that's really important as well, because we can get caught up in all of these things that we have to do or that we can't do because of our conditions. But if we can use those things to then find positives out of them and things to help us to get through life, then that's brilliant. And you're doing exactly that.
I think I spent a lot of years being a very good faker. I could disguise how I was feeling really well, just to get through and stay employed. And then there definitely came a time, and it was around my diagnosis, where I was like, you can't live like this, you can't do this anymore. And I did have some counselling going, I've had this diagnosis, this is going to be rough. And I suffer from anxiety. So Tim's saying I'm better than his previous partner. I do have anxiety, and I came off my anxiety medication in order to be pregnant. But I had some counselling, and I basically said, right, I need to find a way to deal with all of this and not let my mind spiral and to find the positive and everything. And I think it's definitely something I've worked on, because there's no other way to live. Whenever I find somebody who's newly diagnosed, I've got to sit them down and go, you've got a diagnosis, this is brilliant, because now you can make your life work, you can work out how you do it, and you can hit things head on, any disability. And it doesn't work. You can't fight it or combat it or deny it. If you want to carry on, you've just got to work around it.
Yeah, you do. Acceptance is really important. I think some people see acceptance as giving up, but actually, well, I know for me and for many people, once you get to that point of accepting this is what it is and this is what I have to deal with, then you can go forward and make a plan, like you said. And you can say, right, well, this is what it is. This is how I'm going to be able to work my life around what is going on. And that's really important. But like yourself, I spent many years sort of faking that I was okay, hibernating when I wasn't. I couldn't handle being around people or didn't want them to see me in a particular state, and also just fighting against it.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
It takes so much energy. You use so much energy, as well as the energy that you already don't have. You're then using energy, faking it, hiding it, not accepting it, fighting it. It's a lot.
Yeah, I think I did a very long phase of going, hi, I'm Helen, I have EDS, and this means blah, 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 blah. I think, right, I've now spent like almost an hour and I'm still talking about me and my condition. And then I made a realization that if I talk about it all the time, it's one.
Yeah.
And I don't want to. And I know other people will deal with this differently. But when I meet somebody new now, I go, no, I'm disabled. I've got a blue badge. As in, you take it seriously. But these are the things you need to know. I may cancel on you, but I'll try and be there.
Yeah.
I don't have to explain myself or my condition at length anymore. I've kind of come to peace with that. And it's very much if you don't like it, you can lump it. Do you know what I mean? If you have a problem with this, I don't need to communicate with you anymore. Goodbye. Which is a good place to be.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like you've gotten yourselves into a good routine now, and made the adjustments that you've needed to make, and things seem to be flowing well with parenthood.
Yep. Speaking of which, I think we might have a waking baby.
Yeah. So obviously everything changes all the time, and she changes all the time. So we're starting to do weaning. We're starting to look after teeth. We're starting to deal with a very awake, lively, intelligent, and slightly bored baby, aren't we? So you're doing everything early. So we're having to change now to keep up with her a little bit. So we've got the routine that works, but now she also needs entertaining, or now she also won't immediately go to sleep.
Yeah. Is she awake then?
Yeah, she's a bit like Tim. She needs a long run up. And he's fairly grumpy.
Sounds like me as well. I'm terrible when I've first woken up. I'm just miserable. Don't speak to me.
But it's also, I don't know, everybody thinks their baby's unique, but like now she'll wake up and that was only a tiny noise. She's awake, not crying. She'll look at me. Maybe in 5 minutes time she'll decide to cry if milk doesn't arrive, but she's very good, aren't you? Do you want to keep on talking and I'll just go and make a milk?
Yep. Well, I was going to say, the one thing that has been Helen's worry is obviously keeping an eye on the baby. And it's too early to know, but we're really concerned, but to see if there's symptoms of EDS in the baby. And it's very hard to say there are or not. You can't really tell for the first few years, I don't think.
Yeah.
But that's been a concern of ours, obviously. So I think everyone's going to watch their baby for concerns of any kind of condition, but we've got one that we know what to look for to a degree. So it's keeping an eye constantly in that regard for, is she moving in an odd way? Is she holding herself differently from other babies? Is this, that, or the other? Which is a worry. It's the only way to really put it. I'm not too concerned. I've not seen anything that confirms that thus far. I've not seen anything that concerns me, and I don't think we will do for a while anyway, even if it's true.
Yeah.
But it's something to consider. It's something to think about.
I don't know. I wish I knew what was happening diagnosed like in my childhood. That would have been great. And there's much more awareness now and much more sort of ability and support out there, but it's still a fight. So yeah, I really want to know that she's got an issue or doesn't have an issue, and then we can help.
Yeah, of course.
I think I read a story about, and I know it was a heart condition, but the baby's first words were like, "Mummy, help me." Oh. And that terrified me. Her being in pain and not being able to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure she isn't, but that thought is in your head. By the time she gets to stool, she'll be feeling what I felt, which is, I don't know why I can't run. I don't know why I can't climb the rope, but I can't.
Yeah. Hopefully she won't have EDS or hypermobility,
Yes.
but if she does, at least she's got two parents who are clued up
Yes.
and
Yeah.
to deal
Yeah,
with it
absolutely.
as a partner and as somebody who goes through it themselves. So either way, she'll be absolutely fine because she's got some great parents there. So
Thank you.
you'll see her through whatever she goes through in life. So is she feeding now?
Yeah, just got a bottle in her now.
Yes. See what I mean? In the room, you always feel like the odd person out, even though nobody can tell. In the mother groups, we really feel like the odd one out because either Tim's there on his own and he's the only dad, or we both go together. Like this morning, we both go together, which is the only person where mum and dad are there. And I'm very lucky I have a year's paid maternity leave, so taking full advantage of that. But you don't want to turn up and go, hi, we're both here because I have EDS, blah, blah, blah. You know, we just sort of get on with it and think if anybody wants to ask us about it, they can.
Yeah.
Getting used to being the only dad in the room is, I was kind of expecting it, but it is a bit of a downer sometimes.
And it's also very noticeable. She's quite different to the other babies because we've been here, like the health visitor and the few midwives said, you're really calm. And it's like, that's because this is not the worst thing that could happen to us in the next week, you know. Actually needs an injection, that's fine.
Yeah.
So Lily's really quiet and calm and a happy baby because you are. I think genetically we've got lucky, we've got a happy baby. But we deal with a lot and it's not an issue.
Your calmness is going to impact her, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it has.
Yeah, definitely. So the calmness, the happiness, it does rub off on our children.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can't always be in control of that, but yeah, it definitely does have an impact. Oh, it just all sounds wonderful. I'm getting all clucky.
I mean, we're saying this, there'll still be like an hour before I go to sleep tonight where I'm utterly exhausted and I'm just like, Lily, just stop grizzling. Yeah, like that. I'll have to just sit there and hold her because I can't do anything else. I'll have to go, Tim, yeah, I need to pass the baby. I am done now. Goodbye. I need to lie down in the cold dark room. So it's not all perfect and happy and wonderful, but it's going better than we thought it would.
and the flip side to that is at least you do have me to pass the baby too. And
Yeah.
we are in a lucky position, there's no other way to put it, that we're both home and that I am able to be a full-time dad. It's what I always wanted, and it's an arrangement that works perfectly for us, and we're very lucky to be able to do that.
There's certainly, like in the mornings, I'll go, I could get up and do something with Lily. To be honest, she's a bit sleepy, so I'm going to go back to sleep and she's going to go back to sleep. And if I still feel rough and I wake up again for the next feed, Tim can take over.
Lovely to have that partnership and to have each other in that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have a few top tips for new parents?
My top tip, my biggest thing, and it's what I said earlier, is communication. It's always communication. Learning to communicate with your partner, learning to tell them things they don't necessarily want to hear, being able to speak to them frankly and honestly. It always comes back to communication. Helen telling me I'm not feeling well enough, I need you to take over here. It's fine, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I can't literally hold her any longer.
Yeah.
You have to hold her now.
Clear and concise communication. Telling your partner when you've got a problem with what they're doing, but being able to communicate that in an inoffensive way rather than starting arguments. Yeah. I mean, isn't that always the goal for any relationship anyway?
Yeah.
That you can communicate a problem without it then creating more problems. But communication and learning to do it well. I've said this for all the time I've been in working in a retail environment and managing people. It's communication, in a relationship, communication, caring for a child.
Yeah.
All of it. Everything becomes 10 times easier if you communicate clearly with one another. In any situation, I'd hold that. And that's the biggest thing I'd suggest to anyone. And this goes with managing Helen's condition, managing her pain and what she is or isn't able to do on a day-to-day basis, managing the baby, managing the relationship around those things.
Yeah, I think sometimes I don't even know, but I've got to make the decision. I don't know if I can do this or not, but okay, I'm going to not. Yeah. Or please, Tim, let me try. Yeah. That I've got to be really clear about that for you.
But letting me know that that's again communication. Is communicating. Yeah. I'm not sure I'll be able to do this. I'm going to give it a crack, or we might have to stop. Means that I'm not going to go, oh well, I thought we were going to do this. We're halfway through it, and now we're having to stop.
Yeah. 2 of us trying to bath her together was a nightmare.
Yeah, that was terrible.
We bathed like one person.
Yeah.
So I think my top tip is don't sweat the small stuff. If trying to both bath when we do it slightly differently, it doesn't actually matter as long as you get bathed. That's the end of the day. But not being annoyed, like you're doing something and it's not the way I would do it. So what? Is she fed? Yes. Is she dry? Yes. Right. We'll worry about everything else tomorrow.
Oh, there we go.
Don't feel bad that you haven't done that extra bit of tummy time or the extra bit of thing that you were told that you had to do. And particularly don't get annoyed when I haven't got enough energy to now. Tim's doing something not quite the way I do it with her. It's fine.
Yeah, wonderful. I can just hear her there in the background.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been absolutely fabulous speaking to the two of you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
It was nice to talk to you too, to be honest.
Really, really busy schedule. But so thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was good. Good to talk.
And you're a chronic warrior because
I was going to let that question be asked. But...
So before we go, Helen, could I ask you to complete the sentence for me? I am a chronic warrior because...
I am a chronic warrior because I find the positive and look at what I can do and look around what I can't.
Thank you. I hope to keep in touch and
Yeah.
get some more lovely pictures of little Lily every now and again as she grows.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, wonderful. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep.
You too.
Okay, thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Chronic Warriors podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share this podcast.